The next witness is number 426. It's in the addendum, page 72.
Good morning, Mr. Witness. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. I am at your disposal.
The chair is going to swear you in right now.
Mr. Witness, thank you very much for agreeing to testify. Would you repeat after me, please? I do solemnly declare that I will speak the truth.
من رسما قسم می‌خورم که حقیقت را بگویم.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness.
I solemnly declare to tell the truth.
But the truth.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth. I will only tell you the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, there's a delay, so I apologize if I'm talking over you. Okay, Mr. Witness, can you please tell us what happened during the Aban protests?
In 2009, it was on 16th of November 2009, and the petrol price had gone from 1,000 tuman to 3,000 tuman, and Iranian people, because of the hike in the fuel price, took to the streets and started their protests. And in these protests, the crowds were on the streets, and the regime and the terrorist IRGC forces turned protests into riots. And in Mehrabani, 11 innocent youth were killed. And the names of 8 of them I have, and I can, and who were killed by the IRGC terrorists. Can I, do you want me to continue, or do you want to ask me questions?
You can continue, and I'll follow up with questions after you're done.
Okay. Yes. On 16th of November at 11 a.m., I am Aboubakr Mehrabani. I am a political activist, and my nephew called me and said I am being invited to a village, and he went to Shabrang Square, which is one of the main squares in the city of Mehrabani, and he was among the protesters. He was innocent, he hadn't done anything, and a plainclothes officer and also somebody who was wearing Kurdish trousers but was IRGC, from 5 meters away, they shot him twice on his forehead, and he fell down, and his blood was spattered all over the square, and he was taken to the hospital in Mehrabani, the Abu Sina hospital, and he died in that prison. But Nevertheless, they'd taken him to hospital in the hope that they would save his life. But however, upon arrival, he was dead. And my sister didn't know that his son had become a martyr. And she phoned one of the relatives, and who was told that one told her he was injured, the other one says he was martyred, and no one had given her any the correct information. So until the evening, she went there herself and to a place where the cool bars, or those who eke out a living by selling things on the border, she went there, and because the dead bodies were taken there, and then they tell her that they gave her the body, but they said she's not allowed to have a ceremony, a funeral ceremony, because we will have our plainclothes officers watching you, and if you say anything against Islamic forces or the Islamic Republic forces, we will make sure that your life becomes more unbearable. And there will be lashes as well. So my sister and my family, because my sister also has another son and daughter, so she was too fearful to go and say anything or protest. So she couldn't do anything. And so without any ceremony, he was buried. Mehrabani, like other cities, the regime's forces committed egregious atrocities. In Mehrabani, 11 people were killed. And they want to pretend to the world that they weren't protesters, but they were rioters. And no, they were not protests, they were riots. And the regime's forces, they set some banks on fire. I have names that I could have given you, but in fear of endangering the security of my family, I cannot sadly do so. I do not want them to be harassed in any way. But I know it was the regime's forces that set public buildings and banks on fire, and those who were protesting were not armed. The protests were peaceful. Now, and they couldn't even chant death to the Islamic regime, especially in Mehrabani, because they ascribe any kind of affiliation to different political parties to us, because we are from Mehrabani. So we say we support Kumala, and families in Mehrabani who've lost their loved ones. These families were laborers, they were hard workers, and their children were innocent. And the names of the victims in Mehrabani who were killed by the terrorists, IRGC, Daniel Stewart Mehran Park, Behruz Maleki, Nasudian, Esman Naderi, Aryan Tasavi, Shahu Vahedi, and Edis Ami. And 3 of them whose identity is still not known, and nobody knows where they were taken and who they were. And in Mehrabani, there were more happened, but I hear from families and relatives that many killed and more were killed. And again, I want to repeat how they have been putting pressure on my family. The IRGC took my sister to the IRGC twice, and they said, we've heard you've been talking and protesting, and protesting. And my sister, she really pledged not to protest, and they just told them to beware. Mala Asman Forces, which is one of the clerical councils in Marivan. Somebody from there went to my sister's house. He was a cleric and said, be careful. If you want any help, you can file a complaint. If you want compensation, you can seek compensation. But my sister said, who do I complain about? What do I do? I'm helpless. Because but nobody else from the regime went to visit my sister and tell her why her son was killed and who had killed her son. My nephew was the breadwinner of the family, and he because didn't have a father. My sister also has another son who's divorced, and the grandson also lives with them. And you know, people in Marivan are very poor, and it's the living conditions. Sometimes they go to bed on empty stomachs. And he was a cool bar. And he was selling, and they weren't smuggled. It was items like tea and yogurt he'd take and sell to Iraq over the border. That's what cool bars do. So her life was totally destroyed psychologically. My sister is not in a good place. She's very poor and suffering. And the atrocities they perpetrated, and please, you tribunal, you People's Tribunal, I want to tell you that Iranian people, especially in Khobar, they go through the border to Iraq to eke out a living, and they want to. There's poverty. And protests were because people want their rights. Wherever in the world, people should be able to protest and air their grievances and demand their rights. Why should young people in our part of Iran have to resort to becoming cool bars or petty sellers of goods along the border? And I am telling you, those who... It was a protest. It wasn't a riot, as the regime pretends it was. They killed innocent civilians, and it's the human duty of the world to do something, and they should know what the Iranian people have been suffering and what they have been subjected to. And our country is... everyone is being accused of being spies, and they are taking our money and spending it on helping Iraq and Syria instead of spending it on our people. That is our protest. I urge the Honorable Tribunal. I would like to speak on behalf of all those who were killed in Marivan. I urge you to please avenge these innocent people of Marivan, who, I repeat, are very very poor. Please defend them. I am at your disposal. If you have any questions, I am here to answer. Please go ahead.
Much. So, to clarify, you had mentioned that in Marivan there's a lot of political activity. Is it normal for the IRGC or SEPA to be present in Marivan on a normal basis?
Marivan is a border town in Kurdistan. And at the beginning of the revolution, I remember Bani Sadr, who was the ex-prime minister, President warned that don't attack Marivan because there will be bloodshed. But Khomeini started killing people in Marivan. And he started provoking Turks, Kurds, Shiites. Kurdistan was always a place of armed resistance. And because of you can protest, the kind of protest you can have in Shiraz and Esfahan, for instance, you cannot do in Marivan, or anywhere in Kurdistan. If you protest anywhere in Kurdistan, they charge you with colluding with terrorist groups. And IRGC is perpetually present in Marivan, and some because of poverty, they have joined armed groups, and their military is constantly killing these kulbars who are trying to eke out a living, and there are armed groups, and they're being constantly watched.
One of the statements you made was that you noticed a person in Kurdish pants, but it was a member of the IRGC. So how were you able to tell that that person belonged to the IRGC?
He's well known because no one in Marivan except the regime's forces wear these clothing. And the majority of armed forces wear Kurdish and local outfits. But they wear something on top which shows that you are an IRGC. Only this arm that is on their jacket can be worn by the IRGC and the local regime forces. So it was the arm on his jacket that I could see. And one of the witnesses was 5 meters away, but I can even name that person. Those who set banks and public places on fire, as I said, I have these names, but because I am worried for the lives of my relatives, I cannot give you these names, because once they see these videos, maybe they will cause problem for my parents, for my brothers, for my sisters. I cannot sadly give you their names. They were 100% armed forces belonging to the IRGC, including that person, because nobody else can wear that jacket, which is an IRGC one.
Question before I give you to the panel. Did you notice an increase before the protest started, even though normally they're there? I'm trying to understand whether there were people that they arrived during the time of the protests.
other places in Iran, but the number of IRGC officers have always been greater in Kurdistan. So they wouldn't need to prepare their forces because they are always armed. There are some Kurdish armed forces, armed militia in the area. That's why the IRGC is always armed and ready to fight against the Kurdish militia. Tehran is different. IRGC may need to prepare, but Kurdistan is a place that the IRGC forces are always ready and armed. They accuse people of different things. It has been 43 years that they are suppressing people. I don't just say in Kurdistan. They work against humanity, against Iranian people in general, but their activity, their military activity is even greater in Kurdistan, as there are some political groups active in that region. So they are always ready to kill, cut the Kurdish people, to put them in prison, torture them, rape them.
Mr. Chair?
I've got just a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Witness. In your witness statement, I just want to try to understand better this issue of Kurds of Marivan. And you say in your statement that one of the Kurds of Marivan, who are the mercenaries of the regime, killed your nephew, or you were told that a Kurd from Marivan killed your nephew. Is that right?
Yes, it is. I was told by someone. He said that he was on the other side of the road and somebody came and shot at my nephew from 5 meters distance in the forehead. He was wearing an IRGC uniform and he had a Kurdish trousers on. That's what I heard.
So the Kurds of Marivan, presumably not all of them are mercenaries of the regime. You can see if they're mercenaries if they wear the IRGC clothes at the top of their body, right? Shirt, jumper, whatever, uniform. Do you follow my question?
Yes, I understood your question. We've got some local mercenaries in Marivan. They have been a mercenary for 43 years. They wear Kurdish clothes, but they are armed. We've got a minority mercenaries in the area, local mercenaries, and they said that we will make the Marivan of Kurdistan into Qom and Kashan. We will build some religious places here like the other cities in Iran. So we have such mercenaries of the regime in the area. Josh is a place that they want to turn into
Let me just pause you a minute. When you say mercenaries, you mean there are Kurdish men in the region or in Marivan who, when certain jobs need to be done, they will put on the IRGC uniform and go and do those jobs. Is that what you mean by mercenaries?
Yes. By mercenary, I mean the regime mercenary. They wear Kurdish clothes too, but they are at the service of the regime. They are colonels, they work for the IRGC, and they call themselves as Muslim sacrificers. They are Kurdish mercenaries at the service of the regime. They act against the struggle of the Kurdish people for freedom. They have turned their back to their own people. They have hand in hand with the regime. They are committing crime against their own people. We call them mercenaries of the regime.
Yeah. Okay. So they work full time then for the regime, and they are no longer, in a sense, accepted by the ordinary Kurds. Everyone knows that they now work for the regime. Is that right?
There are some who are mercenaries known by everyone, but there are some other mercenaries who belong to the intelligence services. They are not known to people. They influence the communities. They get close to people, to families, to mosques. They go to schools. They want to see what is going on, who is supportive of the Kurdish Democrats. They try to act as informants. They always wear Kurdish clothes, but they are not known to people. But the ones who shot at people, they were the ones whose faces were covered and nobody could identify them. They were among those who were acting for the regime, and we call them as Panj because they are ready to kill people for no money, for a very small amount of money.
What I'm trying to understand is why you're calling them mercenaries. Are they just not another, just members of the IRGC? Are they different to other types of IRGC?
Whoever works for the Islamic Republic regime, armed or unarmed, we call them mercenary of the regime. The terrorist IRGC, they are terrorists wherever they are in the world.
Talking about IRGC then, aren't we? And some of them are Kurds. That's what it comes down to. It's the IRGC.
Yes.
IRGCs, right? Okay. And the ones who have their faces covered, who you... Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Witness.
Please continue. I asked him to stop so that you could continue. You would finish your question first.
Actually, Mr. Witness, please continue.
There are two types of people in IRGC. In Kurdistan, there are some armed IRGC forces who are formed of the Kurds and people from other parts of Iran. They are armed and they are not secret services. Everybody knows them. And we've got some other forces of the IRGC who belong to the intelligence of the IRGC. They are unknown to people. They look for the political individuals, activists. They try to identify these activists and to inform and report them to the Islamic regime. Nobody knows that they belong to the regime. They wear the Kurdish local clothes. They spy. They are the intelligence department of the IRGC. They find every activist and they inform and report them to the regime.
Okay, thank you. I lost reception for 10 seconds then, so forgive me if you've already answered this. Can I just ask, and forgive me for not knowing the politics, but I'm just interested in why you refer to these men as mercenaries. Within the Kurdish community, is there a general idea that the Kurds should not work for the regime, and so anyone who does is regarded as a traitor to some degree?
This regime came to power 43 years ago. Khomeini, when he came and gave a message to people, he said that he will provide people with free houses, free water, electricity. He made promises. Instead of making everything free for people, he executed 100,000 people. He started killing people. He tried to cause dispersion among people. So whatever religion people have, whatever language the people have, whoever works for the regime, we call them mercenary. They are traitors. They are murderers. They are working against humanity because the Islamic Republic is a criminal. It is mass murderer. It's a mass murderer. It doesn't understand the language of democracy. It says that you should cut the tongues of the people. We should break the pens of the people. They are not democratic. You are not allowed to do any activity. You cannot say that I have my own opinion. You cannot say that I can defend my own idea. I'm a socialist, I'm a communist, I'm a Democrat, I want freedom, I ask for the equality of the rights, of gender equality right. They say you are not allowed to do so. It's banned because the regime doesn't want us to be free and to speak freely. So whoever belongs to the regime is a mercenary. And you know that an airplane was shot by the IRGC and 160 people were killed. Don't you think that they are criminals?
Okay, Mr. Witness, thank you. I've got nothing further. I think that's all the questions from the panel, Council. Do you have anything arising?
No further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Witness.
Mr. Witness, thank you very much for coming and helping the tribunal to understand some very complicated issues. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.
I am also grateful to you for holding this tribunal in the UK. I hope that you can do something to somehow defend the blood of the individuals against, and you know that the president of this country, Iran, is a terrorist. He was also involved in executions. I hope that you can play a role in taking these traitors into the court and these criminals to the court. Thank you very much.